This shocking story rocked the internet. A criminology Ph.D. student, once obsessed with studying killers, is now accused of becoming one himself in the brutal murder of 4 college students. In the quiet town of Moscow, Idaho, a place of pine-dotted hills and tightly knit neighborhoods, tragedy didn't knock. It shattered the door in the dead of night, an act so brutal, so sudden, it left an entire community breathless. On November 13, 2022, the lives of 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Goncalves, maddiemogen, xanakernodle, and ethanchapin, were stolen inside the very place they should have been safest, their home. The house on King Road had long been a hub of laughter, music, and late-night study sessions. That Sunday morning, it became a crime scene. When officers entered, they found a scene that defied belief. Multiple victims, each stabbed repeatedly with a fixed-blade knife. Some had defensive wounds, signs they fought back. Others, police believed, never had a chance. There was no sign of forced entry, no shattered glass, no screaming neighbors, just silence until the 911 call came hours later. A call that would catapult a sleepy town into the center of a national nightmare. Students packed their bags and left campus in fear. Parents called frantically, desperate for updates. Local businesses put up photos of the victims and handed out yellow ribbons. But behind the fear was a question so dark, so incomprehensible, it hung in the air like smoke. Who could do this, and why? It wasn't long before the case drew national media attention. Reporters descended on Moscow. Social media turned the investigation into a frenzy of speculation. Every rumor became a theory. Every classmate, neighbor, or ex-boyfriend was scrutinized online. But behind the scenes, investigators were methodical. A single clue shifted everything. A Ka-Bar knife sheath found on the bed beneath maddiemogen's body. It bore a U.S. Marine Corps insignia, and more crucially, it held DNA. Security footage also showed a white Hyundai Elantra circling the neighborhood around 4 a.m., just before the murders. Investigators poured through hours of video from nearby traffic and gas stations. The Elantra had been seen multiple times on different nights in the area. This wasn't random. It was planned. Through a painstaking process of elimination and surveillance footage analysis, police traced the vehicle to a student at nearby Washington State University in Pullman, just 10 miles away. A 28-year-old Ph.D. student studying criminology. He was known for being intelligent, socially awkward, and intense. Students in his classes recalled his rigid demeanor, his sharp questioning. He seemed fascinated by the minds of killers, not uncommon in his field, but unsettling in retrospect. More chilling still, just months earlier, Kohberger had posted a survey on Reddit asking former criminals to describe their thoughts and feelings before, during, and after committing a crime. What did they feel? What drove them? It read like someone trying to get inside the skin of a killer, or preparing to become one. As investigators dug deeper, Kohberger's digital footprint emerged. His cell phone had pinged near the victim's house at least 12 times before the murders. Once, he had been in the area at 3 a.m., just weeks before the killings. Surveillance from his own apartment building showed him leaving in the early morning hours and returning later on November 13th. The clincher came from forensic genealogy, the same method used to catch the Golden State Killer. DNA from the knife sheath was compared to DNA from Kohberger's family. The match was nearly perfect. On December 30th, 2022, Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania during a dramatic SWAT operation. He was reportedly found wearing gloves, emptying his car's trunk, and scrubbing down the interior in the early morning hours. Investigators believe he knew he was being watched. His extradition to Idaho was swift, and the charges were grim. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of felony burglary. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Kohberger said nothing. No confession, no emotion. Not during his arrest, not during arraignment, not when asked if he had anything to say to the victims' families. People who knew him described a man with a detached air, someone who seemed to observe others more than engage with them. He'd struggled with heroin addiction in his youth, battled obesity, then reinvented himself through a strict vegan diet, education, and discipline. But underneath, something darker may have remained. He had studied serial killers. He had written academic papers on stalking and predatory behavior. He had walked among criminology professors and perhaps thought he could outsmart them. But real crime is messy, and justice has a way of catching up. For months, Kohberger's legal team maintained his innocence. The trial was set to be one of the most closely watched in modern history, but behind closed doors, the defense was reportedly working toward a plea. On July 2, 2025, Kohberger stood in court and changed his plea to guilty on all counts. The courtroom was silent, stunned. There was no trial, no chance for cross-examination. Only the reality that the man who had studied evil had carried it out. In exchange for avoiding the death penalty, he agreed to 4 life sentences without parole and 10 years for burglary. He waived his right to appeal. The finality was deafening. The sentencing hearing lasted hours. Victims' families delivered heart-wrenching statements. Some offered forgiveness. Others demanded answers. But Kohberger never looked up. He refused to speak. Not even a single, "I'm sorry." Outside the courthouse, people wept. They lit candles, laid flowers, held each other. The legacy of the case. This wasn't just about one man's horrific actions. It was about a system pushed to its limits, a town learning to breathe again, and a generation of students marked by trauma. The University of Idaho created a memorial garden for the victims. Professors held seminars on safety and vigilance. True crime shows came calling. But for many in Moscow, the fame was unwanted. They didn't want to be remembered for this. Yet the story endures, not because of the killer, but because of the lives lost. Kaylee, Madison, Xana, Ethan. They weren't just victims. They were people, loved, missed, and never forgotten. Bryan Kohberger now spends 23 hours a day in solitary confinement at the Idaho Maximum Security Institution. Inmates reportedly call him the Professor, mocking his past as a teaching assistant and criminology student. He is allowed 1 hour of exercise in a small cage yard. No one visits him, not even his family, who have been thrust into their own nightmare of disbelief and shame. According to prison sources, Kohberger rarely speaks. He spends most of his time reading and writing in notebooks that will likely never see the light of day. Some speculate he's documenting his thoughts, perhaps even analyzing his own crimes the way he once analyzed others. Whether it's remorse or cold detachment, no one knows. And maybe no one ever will. The Kohberger case has forced many to question our fascination with true crime. Why do we follow these stories? Why do some killers crave the attention? For investigators and criminologists, the case has become a chilling example of a killer hiding in plain sight, blending into the very world he studied. The case didn't just stay local, it became a global obsession. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. Documentaries appeared on streaming platforms. News outlets reported every courtroom glance, every legal maneuver. The idea that a criminology student, someone studying criminal minds, could carry out such a cold-blooded act fascinated and horrified the public. Questions flooded social media. Did he kill to prove he could outsmart investigators? Was it revenge, or a dark experiment gone too far? No answers came. Kohberger remained silent, locked in his cell, reading books and avoiding contact, as if retreating into the same isolation that once defined his life. The families fight for justice. For the families of Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, justice is not a sentence. Justice can't bring back birthdays, weddings, or the simple joy of hearing their loved ones laugh. But they've chosen to keep their memories alive, not defined by their deaths, but by the lives they lived. Still, many questions remain. Why those 4? Was Kohberger stalking them for months, waiting for the right moment? Did he crave power? Or was it something darker, a twisted need to make his own perfect crime? He has never given a motive, and perhaps he never will. Some believe his silence is his final weapon. depriving the families of the why. Others think it's a sign of weakness, a man who wanted control but has none left. Moscow, Idaho is healing. The families are healing as much as anyone can after such loss. And though the answers may never come, one truth remains unshaken. Evil may break hearts, but it cannot break love.